welcome everyone to the first episode of the Candid Sales Rep podcast. I'm super excited to have Ken Lundin here with us. He is the president of RevHeat and a sales expert, and he has written the book Strategic Selling Unleashed. We will share all the information you need to go get that book afterwards, as Ken will be sharing some really good tips and tricks from that. But yeah, Ken, I feel like I might have stolen your thunder a bit there, so I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself as well.
Oh, yes. Izzy, I couldn't be more fired up about this. Like a little bit, right? Like I'm a sales guy at heart. Started out of the beginning, selling, doing stocks, this kind of stuff. So sales guy at heart. I'm super fired up about this because most of the stuff that we do, when we're actually actively talking to people, we're talking to CEOs. So I love the idea of just having those candid conversations about how to improve the lives of sellers, like how to act, what's actually going on out there, and how do we make them more effective, and what can they do? We've got a lot of experience with that. We've worked with 3 unicorns so far. We've got a 4th in the pocket that I'm pretty sure about, which means they were privately held and worth $1 billion. We've taken sellers from earning $70,000 to earning $2 million over 4 years. So I'm just super fired up that let's talk. Let's get going.
Perfect. Well, it sounds like you're the perfect person to talk about breaking through the sales quota barrier, like you say, getting up into the millions. So something I wanted to start with, I guess, is just a lot of salespeople that, I've spoken to recently and I've heard a lot of people talking, on LinkedIn and such, is kind of talking about the fact that sales at the moment feels a lot harder than it ever has been before. I'd love to get your take on why that might be that salespeople are finding it hard to sell and what you think might be contributing to that.
Well, you're absolutely right. Sales is harder today than it has been in the last probably 4 years for sure. And even I'd go back probably 2 decades. So most people who are still in selling roles are running into some new brick walls and some new barriers that they have not had to deal with any time in their career, to be honest. So we have 3 main contributors to what's kind of happening right now. One of the primary contributors is this. We have an uncertain market because of all the macroeconomic noise. So if you're selling to large companies, they're starting to slow down and pause a little bit because, in the United States, as an example, there's, in case you haven't paid attention before this episode was gone, there's an election that's occurring. In addition to that, there's an unstable interest rate environment. So the larger the company is that you're trying to sell to, they have more concerns about that. I think the second thing that's actually contributing to things slowing down is there's all this talk and hubbub about the idea of how to use artificial intelligence to do other things in organizations, but nobody's figured out how to do it. And so things that you would normally have outsourced or bought from sellers and other companies, if they're kind of task oriented and they're lower value contributions, those particular things are not necessarily things that are now getting the same urgency in dollars. And then the third component I think that's really happened with sellers is this: remote work and their inability or being ineffective at changing how they go about their days and their lives and taking control of those things, because in this environment, it's never been more true than it is today. You are what you do. And I think sellers are doing less.
Yeah, those are all really good points. And I can imagine that the election over in the US is a big contributor to a lot of uncertainty. But I think certainly something we're seeing in EMEA as well is the AI piece is very true across both sides of the pond. And I agree, I think people are unsure of how to use it. And I think just actually even deeper than that as well, I was reading quite an interesting article about how actually quite a lot of salespeople don't actually receive training from their managers, or they don't actually receive that coaching. And I think actually a lot of managers don't actually get coached on how to coach as well. So it's a bit of a knock-on effect. And I just was curious to, hear what you think about what you're seeing organizations doing to support their sales reps through these kind of uncertainties.
So you decided to cut to the chase. You decided, okay, let's really talk about the truth about what's happening and whether or not we're enabling sellers to do their jobs effectively. No, we're not. That hasn't changed. In spite of the fact that sales training statistically has the highest return on many of the things that you can invest in for personal development, you get $2.46 back for every dollar you invest. So a dollar yields $3.46 in return, but somehow we don't invest in that. And so there is this malaise of the Peter principle. So we have 3 things going on within organizations. One, the Peter principles exist, and that is salespeople are being promoted to their level of incompetence. So I'm going from a seller to a manager to a regional manager to a VP, but nobody's training me on how to actually get more out of people. They're promoting me because I was good in my job, and I don't understand as a seller that the truth is I don't have to take the promotion. And there's a totally different way that you need to go motivate others. So you have that first of all. Second, they tend to think that sales is an art. So organizations, managers are like, well, I don't get it. Like, why can't Susie be successful? Because, I was. And so they think, oh, you either have it or you don't. And that's complete crap. Because sales is 75% science and frameworks and infrastructure and process. And we don't have that inside the organization. And we haven't found a way, like we talk about all the time, to use AI to enable an organization so it doesn't have to be one-on-one. I mean, how are you going to level up the organization, right? And then the third component is we like to blame people, right? You get one person managing 8 people, and that one person says, I don't know why they can't do it. I'm like, well, what have you done for coaching? Oh, well, I helped them price a deal. That's not coaching. When you got off a phone call, what did you do to understand what the actual sales questions were in that call? Did you say, hey, Izzy, so at this point, why didn't you ask this question? Or Izzy, hey, what would you have asked instead of that? Or do you think we could have gone deeper on that? What you end up saying to them is, hey, nice call. The opportunity's moving forward in a stage. Managers have to have one thing and one thing only that they know. If you want your life to be easy as a manager and you want to crush quota, then your job is to improve the critical thinking skills of your team. And unfortunately, organizations are doing a very poor job of it. And that's part of the reason why 75% of sellers miss quota in the first half of this year. So yeah, Izzy, I think you're completely on it. And if I had a soapbox, I'd be stepping on it right now to get even taller about this issue. So yeah, it's troublesome because it's only going to get harder to sell in this environment. And there's the other conversation that we need to continue to have, whether it's now or at some point, and that is, what's AI actually going to do to the sales organization, right? There's two sides. How does it support it? But what's it going to do to it? Who's going to have a job?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everything you were speaking to just then was highlighting the importance of building the soft skills of a salesperson. I've been in a sales role before, and the first things I was taught was, all of the kind of, this is how you log a deal on the system, and this is how this is the pitch, go learn it. And then I've done the pitch, and then what? How do I understand then what they're saying to me, and how do I then take that to the next step? And I think that's where AI is going to be super interesting, because like you said, AI can do a lot of the grunt work, but like what grunt work? And then where does that then leave your salespeople? Because it's already competitive, and everyone's going to have the best soft skills out there, but no one's developing those soft skills. So yeah, I agree. It's a bit of a vicious cycle if we're not careful about it.
Yeah, the soft skills that you speak to that need to be developed by salespeople, that's what we would say is the 25%, right? So there's 75% that's framework, process, it's methodology. It's a whole nother conversation about process versus methodology. But that 25% soft skills is how do you go about actually executing, right? How do you actually have the conversation, do the thing, do the role play? And the interesting thing about it is you're right. Most sellers come on like you did, and they said, hey, here's all our company stuff, and here's why we think we're so special. And then you get a lot of founders, because they're the ones that private equity wants to back, who are technically based. So they think, oh, the product, let's do product market sales, right? Let's go ahead and do product-led sales. Let's do this thing where our software is the most important thing on the planet. Great. So it's got a good user interface. I don't care. How does it solve the problem I have? And sellers need to figure out how they can go get the data that understands the people they're selling to instead of just the products they're selling. And it's a critical component that we're missing when we're onboarding people, as you spoke to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you speak a lot in your book about the consultative selling approach, and I think that's the crux of it, right? It's you can't consult someone unless you understand them and their problem. And would you be able to speak a little bit more about that and maybe also throw in some kind of examples of when consultative selling's worked really well, with people that you've worked with in the past?
Sure. I think the best way to talk about this is through a story. So, as an example, we had a rep that we worked with for a number of years named Neil. So Neil was going out and he was pitching product, right? Neil was like, okay, here's our thing, here's our service, here's what we do. Want to buy it? Right? Here's our people. They're $200 an hour. You want to buy it? Because that's what the company had taught him to do. So when you take that and enter us after the company's been through a 2.5-year revenue slide, and we flip the script and we say, no, we we have to be consultative and we need to be strategic. And everybody thinks they know what those words mean. And that's the other problem, right? Everyone talks past each other. So we go in and we start this process that's outlined in the book, Strategic Selling Unleashed. It's our sales methodology. And we say, look, when we talk about business needs and motivation, you're stopping, Neil. You're just hanging out here at the tactical need. I called because I need better reporting. I'd ask him, why are they going to buy? Well, they need better reporting. Okay, Neil, how much is your product or service? Well, $75,000. Neil, do you think anyone in their right mind is actually going to spend $75,000 to have prettier PDFs? No, but they'll spend $75,000 to have better data that lets them make better decisions faster, that allows them to decrease risk, decrease expense, or increase ROI. So we went through this process with Neil, taught him that sales method, taught him that process, and the difference was he went from being on a performance improvement plan to being the #1 seller in the world 3 years later because he dialed in on that component, right? What is the actual need that we have of our client? The consultative selling comes down to this. Let's assume for a second, Izzy, do you like cars?
Love them.
Okay, what's your favorite? If you could have any 2 dream cars, what would those be?
Recently rented a Fiat 500. Really enjoyed that driving experience, especially around London. Nice, small, nippy, could get into the spaces. But like my dream car would be like soft top Porsche, like driving around, wind in my hair.
I'd like the wind in my hair and a Porsche too. So we have your 2 cars. You have the Fiat that you had and the Porsche, which are both ideal, right? And let's say that you're in a position where you can go buy whatever you want. Here's how you know that you become a trusted advisor, a corporate partner, or that you're doing consultative selling. If you know that I'm the top Fiat salesperson in all of London, but you come to me to ask me what you should buy based upon you. You know that I've become a trusted advisor when I have skin in the game. The client knows I have skin in the game, and they still come ask the question because they know that I am going to help them figure out what is best for them. Think about the power of that relationship instead of, hey, you want to buy my Fiat? Consultative selling is the only way to go on anything that takes any type of consideration from a pricing perspective. And so what I would say is, if you can swipe a credit card to get through it, well, maybe you don't have to be as rigorous about it. If you have to go through layers of approval, you better be able to get to what the business problems are for each and every stakeholder in the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, and I'd love you to correct me if I'm wrong here, but something that I was thinking about when you were talking about all of that was, it seems that quite a common issue is that people when they're selling something, they stop at the features and forget to go that step beyond. Would you say that, boiling it right down to kind of just a mindset and way of thinking of it, would you say that would be fair, that that's kind of the very crux, or would you say it goes further than that?
I would say you're absolutely right, that people tend to stop at the features of their thing or the assumed benefit. So here's what's interesting. They stop at the features or the assumed benefit, but I'm going to give them a hack right now. Do this will change the way you talk to people. And the phrase is so that. So pause the podcast right now, pause the video, write it down, put it in quotes and put it on a Post-it note on your computer. Here's why. Because the next time you say a feature, say so that, and then fill in the back end with why in the world it matters. Why does it matter to that person, to what their goals are, to what they're trying to accomplish, to their problem, so that you get this benefit.
Love that. I wish I'd spoken to you right at the beginning of my career. Maybe I'd still be working in sales. Awesome, thank you for that. And just to then go up a level again, so that was a great bit of advice for your reps. What advice would you give to maybe a team lead in kind of taking that to their team and helping them on their way to incorporating that into their day-to-day?
The #1 piece of advice that I'd give to a team lead or a sales manager would be this: slow down. And here's why. When you're asking people, how are you? How's today going? The #1 answer they're going to give you starts with a B, ends with Izzy, like your name, busy. Because busy is a badge of honor. You can't do that as a leader. You've got to be somebody who understands that 50% of your role has to be actually in the trenches, talking to your people, coaching. And you have to focus on the sales motions, not the sales deal, right? We spend so much time looking in the rear view mirror as sales leadership and CEOs. We get to the end of a quarter, we go, oh, we missed the quarter. Oh, we crushed the quarter. Well, if you'd asked me, I probably could have shown you how to know about that 3 or 4 months before it happened. And so by getting in, slowing down, coaching, talking about the sales motions, and making sure that they understand how to improve the quality and value of the deal for somebody else is very different than giving somebody deal advice. So focus on the coaching and know that the deal advice isn't coaching.
That's a really good, there's a really good distinction actually. I think probably a lot of people get the two muddled and think they're the same thing. Yeah, and I just kind of want to as well think a bit about the buyer as well, because I feel like the way that I shop, even, as a consumer, is so different to how I would have done when I was younger. I used to kind of like walk to the shops and go get my, my school shoes. Whereas now I don't probably know, I'm not a parent myself, but I'm sure a lot of parents just do that online. And so I feel like even in the consumer world, the way people buy is so different. But I feel like even in, business to business sales as well, we have to think about a buyer super differently. So I wonder whether you'd be able to, I suppose, shed a bit of light on what you've seen from buyers and how they're different now to what they were before, and then what that means for sales professionals and how they should be approaching that.
The question about how buyers are different is absolutely the right question to be asking, and that's because they're very different. And if the buyers buy differently, we definitely have to sell differently. So if we just take the extreme example, let's talk about 30 years ago. I'm old enough to do that. Izzy, you're not. So I'm old enough to say, what, about 30 years ago, right? And 30 years ago, just kind of as things are coming around, which puts us in the mid 90s, and oh wow, that's when AOL came out. And if anybody remembers AOL, it was like 28K speed. Now we're talking about terabytes, and I don't even know what any of that means. But I do know that when I used to click on a button on AOL, I could actually go get a drink, make a sandwich, and then come back to my desk, and then the page would load. So it's that long ago. So when we start to talk about that, what we really need to understand is this. Back then, we as sellers and companies held all the information. We actually had a monopoly to some extent on our products, services, competitors, everything else, and so people had to engage us. They didn't have a choice because they couldn't find it anywhere else. Fast forward to today, I can find almost anything I want. And there's data that says the buyer is 70% of the way through their journey when they finally want to entertain and talk to a seller. There's good news and bad news with that. Bad news, they think they already know what they want. And they think they already know what problem they're solving. I'll give you a secret. In the vast majority of cases, they're wrong. So that's first, right? The second component and the second problem that comes through from that is what follows, is that because of that, they want to jump into features and forms and not decide whether or not they're solving the right problem. So as a consultative, strategic seller, what we need to be able to do is get them to put a pause on it. We need to go, okay, pause. And people are like, oh, well, Ken, I have a SaaS company and I'm a SaaS seller, and we told them we were going to have a demo. Okay, well, so you feel like you got to deliver a demo and then you've got to talk for 45 minutes straight is what you're telling me. Well, essentially. They'll all argue whether or not they really talk for 45 minutes, but they talk for 45 minutes. So here's the gig. How would you actually get past that? It might look something like this. Hey, Izzy, so glad that we can spend some time together, get together. I do want to talk about the software, and we can potentially show you some of that because I know that that's important to you. But if you don't mind, our software is state of the art. It's got all the ratings. Gartner loves it. It's got all the G2 ratings. It's the best. On the other hand, though, it's only a tool. So I wonder if we could start and I can learn a little bit more about your situation, what's important to you, what you're trying to solve with it, how this fits into it, so I can figure out whether or not it's the right tool for you. And I'll promise you this, if it's not, I'll be the first one to tell you. So do you mind if I ask you a couple questions so we can go down that path?
Go ahead.
Yeah. The buyer will go with you if you'll tell them why. There's a company that I used to do some training with some of their content called Aslan here in Atlanta, Georgia. And one of the things they said is you got to take the buyer on the trip. So if you tell me, get in the car, I'm going to probably weigh the chances of this going bad. If you tell me, get in the car because I'm going to take you to dinner at a 5-star steakhouse within 10 miles of your house, and I'm paying for it, I'm jumping in as quickly as I can. Let's go. So if you tell me where I'm going, if you take the trip, the other way that we say is stop making your buyers do mental gymnastics. Because I might look like I actually am fit, but don't get me doing gymnastics because I'm gonna be a mess. So those are some of the things that I think have changed over the years because we have to understand because of the just sheer amount of information in the world right now, most of the information your buyer gets is actually just confirming their already set biases. Therefore, it may not be the right thing they're looking for.
So I think probably fair to say there then the role of the salesperson has changed from getting someone through the door was probably what they, were there for before, but actually now it's more making sure it's the right door they should be walking through. Would you say that'd be fair?
Yeah, I think getting them through the door is still a problem. Like, people still need more leads, and we hear that every day from clients and prospects for us. But yeah, are they walking through the right door is the truth, right? Or how about this? Getting them into your house through the front door is the first problem. Why should they come in? It's a brownstone, it's a mansion, it's a horse farm. Why should they come in? But then once they get there, which room should they be in? And that's probably the thing with sellers today. We've got to do a good job and be okay with actually helping them figure out, are you in the right room?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think, probably what a lot of people think about selling is that it is kind of like this, it's maybe slightly sharky. I would imagine some of the, connotations someone would put against sales are negative words because people fundamentally don't like to be sold to. So I think, taking that approach, also it just kind of disarms someone, I guess, before they can even make assumptions about you as a salesperson, I would imagine.
Yes, and I don't know if you have the same image, so I'd be interested in the image that you have across the pond. But the image that we get here when somebody says, hey, I'm a salesperson, most people get this like used car salesman image. And over here it's in a bad sport jacket, he's got a bad haircut that's got a comb over, and hey, I want to get you in a car today. And I would argue that that's fantastic for people who are actually good, because they never feel like sellers to the people they work with. They feel like advisors. They feel like people who can work with them. They feel like people who can help add value. Gartner, the big research and technology company, did this. They do a ton of research on tech. They do a ton of research on other things. And a few years ago, what they said is that 74% of buyers actually want value from their sales process, from their salesperson they work with. Only 47% feel like they get it. And here's the real problem that tells me that maybe we're not solving the right problems. Only 27% of buyers actually believe that they got a high-quality solution when the whole thing was done. There's a gap. As sellers, you can go fill that, and you can be the difference, because your company name is almost irrelevant in what you're selling until the very end as you move into contracting.
Yeah, I mean, those are some pretty scary stats, actually, if you think about it. And I guess then, just because we've only got kind of really a few minutes left, I just wanted to make sure that I'd asked you this question. And I think, given this, how the speed that everything's moving at and how quickly things are changing, just in the world of sales, what are some kind of trends that you see coming for salespeople, and what do you think that salespeople should be doing to kind of prepare and make sure they're ready for those changes when they come?
There are a lot of changes coming in the world of sales in the next few years, and they're going to come at a rapid breakneck speed. And AI is going to help remove the lowest value components of sales. And so those people who actually answer the call and start to understand how it's going to supplement their daily work are going to be light years ahead. In our proprietary research on about 13,000 sellers last year, what we found is 50% of salespeople don't have the basic skills to actually be successful in sales. So I'm going to tell you the truth. If you haven't hit quota in a few years, if you've changed job every 12 to 15 months and you're on your third or fourth one, you need to double down and you need to get after it yourself, because you're not getting the training and the things you need from others. And if you really want a career in sales, then you need to get into and become a better seller and do the things that make you uncomfortable today, because AI is going to replace you. I think the other thing that's going to happen within this is that truly consultative sellers will become more valuable. And what we teach our clients and preach to our clients is this: the days of hiring rooms full of sellers, like you see in the movies, is over. I'd rather have an effective tiger team, 6 or 8 killers that are going out and doing the right thing by their clients and by the company on a daily basis. And I will outsell that team of 12 that you have every single day. So there's going to be a premium coming on actually being a really good seller, having really good solid skills, communication skills. Oh, and by the way, taking the one thing that most sellers who are struggling don't, and that's just the extreme accountability for your own success or failure. So there's a wave coming here. Now there's an awesome opportunity for the people who want to take advantage of it. But for those who are going to sit on the sidelines, it's going to be interesting watching where they end up by 2027.
It's kind of scary to think that's only in a few years' time. It feels like it should be a very distant prospect. But thank you so much, Ken, for your insights. I feel like I learned a thing or two. Might want to go back in time and try out being a salesperson again, to be honest, see how I get on. But yeah, if you want to dive deeper into these strategies that Ken has shared, make sure you check out his book, Strategic Selling Unleashed. We'll be sharing a link with that as well. And make sure you subscribe to see more episodes where Ken himself will also be doing the hosting role that I'm doing today with some of our exciting guests we've got coming. And make sure that you give us a follow on Hive Perform on LinkedIn, and then also give Ken a follow on his LinkedIn as well.